Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Gig Money Podcast. I am Cody, and I'm joined by my co-host Drew. And today we are doing a Story of the Day episode about different auditions that we have either been a part of or we have been witness to in the past. So I'm going to let Drew take the lead here and tell us some stories about some various different auditions that he's seen in the past.
Well, thank you, Cody. So a lot of people might not know that me and Cody were in several bands together, and the last band that we were in together, I still have going on right now, which is called Machine Gun Rerun. It's on Spotify and YouTube. Anyway, and Cody was the original guitarist, of course. And when Cody decided to go on and find them greener pastures, we had to go through an audition process. Shortly after this, we also lost our drummer, so it was just me. So I'm trying to find all of the new members and doing all these different tryouts. One thing you got to know about musicians is they can be very interesting. Some of them bad, some of them good, mostly bad though.
Well, the stereotype for a musician, right, is somebody who's lazy and doesn't want to get a job and just sits around and smokes illegal substances all day.
Right.
And,
The devil's lettuce. Yeah. So
the devil's lettuce.
yeah. So going through the audition process, you put up all of these different audition ads, looking for a guitarist, looking for a drummer, doing all these different things. And I ended up getting with a guy, let's say his nickname is Blue. And he was kind of a good guitarist and he was kind of a good drummer. And he introduced me to another guy named Jeremy. Jeremy was a guitarist. And so Jeremy came over and auditioned. He did really well. He nailed it. He had, it wasn't necessarily his style of music. So he had to kind of adapt and get used to it. I mean, there's very few bands that you can actually go step into and go, this is exactly what I was looking for. Unless, of course, you create it. But I mean, being a musician, you just kind of take what you can get that's close enough to your genre, right? So he made it work out with the way he played and everything. So that was fine. But this other guy, Blue, he was all over the place, very emotional, a little different when it came to responsibilities, didn't have any gear whatsoever.
Good old Blue. I remember Blue. I remember his strange fascination with Oklahoma City. And I have been to Oklahoma City many times. I don't get it.
Yeah.
You know, Oklahoma's a great place if you want to be bored all the time or not bored because you're in the middle of a tornado and about to die.
Well, they say the wind goes sweeping down the plains. So
it's funny. We actually just, my son, he's 10 months old 3 days ago, actually. His favorite song is Footloose. Okay.
Oh,
and
nice.
we think it's the drum beat that starts it. And he really gets into it. And we discovered that's because he's a little bit of a drummer himself. He plays on my electronic kit, and we decided that he enjoyed that so much. We got him his own little baby kit, and it's great. So his favorite song is Footloose, and we decided we were going to watch the movie the other night as a family. And he was all about it. He was like, oh man, this is so great. It's filmed in Utah. It's filmed in Utah, in Lehigh.
The original one.
Yes, the original one. We didn't bother watching the remake. It's probably okay, but we were going for the one with the Kenny Loggins soundtrack. I mean, of course, that's what you have to do. You have to start with that because that's what he loves. So it's set in Utah, but the actual story itself is based on real events that happened in Oklahoma. So,
wow.
Anybody that's familiar with what Footloose is about, it's about a city that banned dancing because it was the devil's actions. They were getting too close together. But, I just, that goes back to Oklahoma City and just kind of the whole vibe that I get from it and Blue's fascination with it. So, yeah.
See, and I thought it was about the town I grew up in because it was really, really bad. I grew up in a very small town where everybody really knew each other. And the people who weren't of the dominant religion were really shunned. It's just kind of like if you don't do or act like everybody else does in that area, then, you were a bad person. So nobody wanted to dance with me is what I'm trying to say.
Mm. I would have
Yeah.
danced with you.
Oh, yeah. Of
But yeah,
course.
that's definitely a good point because that's kind of the other end of Salt Lake City, like equally distant, but equally just kind of, I'm not going to say backwards, but
True.
they hold very traditional beliefs. We'll say that.
Very
So
traditional.
yes, it's just crazy. I think I figured it out though. Just thinking about it, he was really big into basketball. So it was the
Yeah.
OKC Thunder that he was really about, not the
Right.
actual city itself, just the basketball team. So
Right.
sorry to
Right.
anybody who's listening from Oklahoma.
I
I
think he was
apologize.
from
I don't.
Oklahoma based, actually.
Yeah,
He
he grew
just
up there,
moved here. Yeah.
and he
Um,
moved to Salt Lake City for whatever reason to scream into a microphone pretending he's Etta James. Good old Blue.
I actually liked the way he sang. I thought it was very unique. I thought it was different, of course, unique being the way. But for me, listening to what he had produced and made himself, and then for him to perform it and sound exactly like he did on the production, that means something to me. That's pretty
Mhm.
awesome, Ryan.
Yeah. It just
S-
it didn't feel like the right setting for what he was trying to accomplish. It was just there
Right.
was some sort of missing element there. That's what I got from it. He was definitely
Yeah.
very talented musically, and he definitely had a wide variety of influences that he definitely pulled from. So that was interesting to see.
So yeah, so he came and he wanted to play guitar, and he played guitar for a little bit, and he was like, I'd rather just play drums. So he played drums for a little bit, and he could hold a pretty good beat. He wasn't a terrible musician at all. He just had a lot of weird emotional things going on and a lot of different things happening in his life constantly. So it created a lot of chaos. And then one day we had some differences in political views, and he hasn't talked to me since. So, I mean, it sucks. But I mean, if you're going to stop talking to somebody over political views, that's kind of BS. Anyway, let's not get into that because that's just a downhill slope from there.
Yeah, that's
Um,
just a whole can of worms that we don't even want to talk about because we're talking
it-
about musicians. We're
right,
talking about
exactly.
music and the things that we love about music and how we do everything that we can to kind of support that.
Right. Yeah, so that was that. So Jeremy, he learns the songs, he gets them all down. He didn't think that he could get them either. He thought, that some of them are really hard. If y'all have heard any of Cody's music, you understand that, he's just a phenomenal guitar player. So having that,
Thank you.
you're welcome. So having that kind of bass there, it's like people listen to it and they go, "I can't play that. Like that's amazing." And I'm like, "Yes, yes, it is amazing, and I believe in you. You can learn this. You can do this." So yeah, Jeremy, he had kind of came in and filled Cody's great big shoes and was learning how to play these songs, and he ended up getting them. He ended up learning how to play them, and although it wasn't really his style of music, he still got in and did his best. And he was a kind of a permanent fixture for a few years. Just a great dude, good dude.
Mhm.
We did audition a lot of drummers, and I remember one of the drummers that came. Oh boy, it's an interesting story, but he liked pop music, was more into poppy music, reggae, kind of stuff like that. Great piano player, good drummer, had a lot of things going on in his life, but he fit in. We were all just a bunch of different people and had a lot of different backgrounds. I ended up scheduling a show, and this is relevant because it's the whole auditioning process and kind of dealing with musicians. Set up a show, and I'm not a person that likes to cancel a show like ever. If I've gone and said yes, I will be there, my band will play there. I do everything within my power to ensure that there's follow through, because I don't want anybody to be like, "Oh, that band's a flake. We're not gonna, push to have them on the next show or anything like that." And,
Yeah,
I take it
yeah.
seriously.
It's
It's
just
it's
that's what you got to do. You got to maintain that professionalism. Otherwise, why would anybody take you seriously rather than the next hobbyist who's just interested in playing music as a pastime?
and drinking beers, right?
Yeah. Yeah, just an excuse to go to a bar and drink beer and play guitar in front of people and look like an asshole.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Look like an asshole. So, yeah, had the show set up. Everything was good. This other guy, the drummer, he was in a few other bands. And I think it was like Wednesday before the show. The show was Saturday. And the Wednesday before the show, he sends me a message and he's like, "Hey, man, I can't do it. I've got another gig that night." I'm like, "Well, wait a minute. When I booked it, I made sure that you were available." And he says, "Yeah, but I've got a gig that's going to pay me. So sorry, I can't do the show." It's like, maybe I could show up at around like maybe 1 o'clock in the morning if you want to do it then. And I'm like, no, that's not how things work. You play the set that you're given, the time slot that you're given. You really don't have a whole lot of oversight on a lot of these things. So naturally, I was frustrated. I didn't want to, not do a show, get a bad image, whatnot. So I ended up getting a hold of the original drummer, David, for Machine Gun Rerun. And I explained to him what was going on. And I was like, dude, is there any way possible that you could do this show with me? And I think it had been about 2 years since he was in Machine Gun Rerun. And he's like, he was like, no, no. He's like, I got things going on. I'm not going to be able to do it. And I'm just like, oh man. I'm like, and I started kind of complaining. I was like, you know how I am. I don't like to, not follow through. I like to keep my responsibilities in that. And this is something I said I'm going to do. And if I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. And he was like, well, sorry. I don't know what to tell you. So I started talking to other drummers around here to see if somebody could fill in. And it was looking very bleak. And the following morning, I got a text from David and he's like, I'll do it. And I'm like, oh, yeah. And he's like, yeah. He says, I know how you feel about, missing a show. And he says, you've always been, good to me. And yeah, he says, why not? He says, I don't have anything going on Saturday night that would deter me from doing this. So I was like, okay, cool. So do you want to come over Friday and Saturday, and just kind of learn or go through the songs again since he hadn't done it for a while? And he's like, no, he says, I'll just come over a little bit early before the show and we can go through the set. And I'm all, are you sure? Because there's a couple new songs. And he's like, yeah, it's fine. No big deal. So he came over. Of course, he insisted on having his own kit, which I don't mind, but I did have to tear my kit apart and take it down. Oh, so much work for me. Anyway, so yeah, he comes over with his kit, it was a very small kit at the time. I think it had like 2 toms, the snare, and then the bass drum and a couple cymbals. But he made it sound like it was huge. He could play that thing to make it sound like he had a million toms and all these different cymbals and stuff like that. He's just a very talented guy. Yeah, he come over and set up. We went through everything and he's like, all right, we'll see you there. So we go and we set up and it ended up being a really good night. It ended up, and then still friends with the guy who kind of ditched out on that show. He's a good guy, and I understand the way he made money was doing these gigs and stuff. And so I get it. But at the same time, if I tell somebody I'm going to do something, I do it. Maybe not everybody's like that, but that's just who I am. And I expect everybody else is going to be the same. If you say you're going to be there, be there. That's it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So that was that guy. And then shortly after that, another guy replied to the ad. His name's Cliff. And he's like, yeah, he says, I love your music. He's like, I love it. I want to be a part of it. And he says, can you send me some more? Because he'd only heard a couple of the songs. And of course, I sent him, there's a song called Stranger Inside. And at the beginning of it is this really cool drum rhythm. And he listened to it and he went, I'm not going to be able to do that. And I was like, come on, I have faith. I think you can do it. You can do it. Come on, all you got to do. And he was about to quit. Like, he came over and he did audition. He was great. Obviously, he'd been listening to the songs, so literally just kind of fit right in. But then we went to go try and do Stranger Inside, and he's like, I don't know this one yet. I'm going to take a little bit more time to learn it. And so during that period of time to the next practice, because it was only practice once a week, same deal, he sent me these messages and he's like, I'm just not good enough. He's like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. And he's like, it's like, I don't know if I'm the right guy for you. And I'm like, you are the right guy for us. Just keep giving it a try. You'll get it. And after he got done doubting himself, he ended up doing it. So he's been the drummer ever since. Shortly after Jeremy's wife got pregnant, 9 months later, they had a kid. And so he stopped doing the
Oh
band.
shit. Is that how that works?
Yeah, that's exactly. Well, sometimes it's not always
Sometimes.
what happens.
Well,
But
that's what happened with us.
so he had a baby. Well, he didn't have a baby, but his wife had a baby. And
Yeah,
that
that's how it
created,
works.
that's
She
how
has the
it works.
baby. She is
Yes.
in
Yeah.
labor for 37 solid hours, and you have to
Yeah.
be there, and you have to be awake the whole time to provide comfort and help. And then when she starts screaming at you, you got to push on my legs. You got to provide positive pressure. Oh God, you got to do it. And you just grab the knees and push in. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh God, this is not going to work. Cut me open, kill me now. Is that normal?
Kill me now. The only thing I got when I had my kid was, you did this to me. And it was very angry. And I was like,
Yes.
well, you were there too. So, I mean, like, you can't
Yeah,
blame it all
it was a
on
joint
me.
effort. My wife was incredible about the whole crazy birth situation, and I'm very, very lucky to have her as my wife and my baby mama because she is one of the strongest people I know, and I could never go through that. Absolutely not. Crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
get you.
Yeah. So I
So, Jeremy.
imagine Jeremy's situation was very similar. He didn't
Yeah.
have the baby, but he was
No,
there
he didn't have the
providing
baby.
support, trying to be a
Right.
good,
Right.
doting husband and father.
Yeah. So, those of you out there who have had kids kind of know how that becomes a priority in your life. You now have a new kid. And if it's your first, it's even kind of scarier because you don't know what to expect. So, that will be prevalent in another one of the auditions that we had. So Jeremy's wife had a kid. Things just got a little too hectic, and he had to leave the band so that he could be home with his wife and help raise the kid, which I understand. That's a noble cause. It's not like, hey, I don't have any more weed and I can't be in the band anymore. All right, I'm making stuff up. But yeah, trying to think of a really BS excuse. But yeah,
Oh
he
man, my toe fungus is way too bad to stand up and play guitar for an hour. I gotta go see a doctor.
Yep, yep. And I know I kind of mentioned something early on about a lot of guitarists not having their own gear. Well, that seems to be consistent. It wasn't that often when somebody would show up with their own gear. A lot of times people would show up with a guitar and maybe a pedal board, maybe. And then that was all that they would ever bring. And then, you talk to them about having an amp and they're like, oh yeah, I've got a practice amp, but I don't have anything that's really substantial. So, I mean, fortunately, I do have a lot of gear. So they get to use my stuff. And that's happened through a lot of the people who've been in the band.
Well, yeah. The thing is, sometimes the musicians themselves don't have the particular access or ability to purchase the requisite gear, even though they have the ambition and the drive to do that. That's why we work these side jobs to buy the gear that we need. But the talent needs to be there, and the ambition needs to be there, and that's where
Mm-hmm.
certain people in auditions kind of set themselves apart. You could show up with a pedal board, but then you plug into a borrowed amp and just blow everybody away because you
Right.
learned all the material, you put the time in, the effort in, and you just say, hey, I can't afford like a legitimate amplifier or setup right now,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm willing to
Yeah.
do this. So it's kind of hard to toe that line because then there's people who show up with like thousands of dollars worth of gear and they don't know what they're doing with it.
Yeah. So, yeah, I can't tell you how many people auditioned that came and had, like I said, first act guitars or, something of the like. I had a guy show up one time that had the action on his guitar. It was like almost this far off of the neck. And I'm just like, how do you play like that? That is just, how do you even keep it in tune with the action that high? But he was good. He was really good, but he was a
Well,
very
of
different
course,
kind of a guitarist. And
you would have to be good to play a guitar with that kind of action because you build up so
right.
much finger strength trying to push that string down. All of a sudden, you're playing on
Yeah.
a very well set up guitar, and it's just like miles ahead of anybody else. That's
hmm
practice, training guitar.
hmm He was fantastic. Like he was a phenomenal guitar player too, but he was one of those people that, showed up, liked it, said, "Oh yeah, I love it. I would like to be here next week." So yeah, this is all great. And then you never hear from him again. So that was quite a few guitarists as well. Yeah, we ended up getting with another guy who was really good, had his own gear, just solid dude. He was kind of a person that he didn't really have much of a filter either. So if something pissed him off, he didn't like something, you would know about it, which could cause some problems. I mean, everybody's there to try to learn how to play, or not necessarily learn how to play, but play the songs and do their best. And if you have a guy there that's kind of like perfectionist, it's like, no, you didn't do that right. You didn't do this right. You didn't do that right. And it's like, we're just jamming, man. Like we're not going to get together and be, like Tool, I guess. That's like the only band I can think of that's like super awesome.
Well, there has to be room for humanity in there. I mean, that's the interesting thing about a lot of music is the human element. And
Right.
for perfection would be absolutely great, but to expect it in everything, you gotta draw a line there. You gotta
hmm
find the balance. And I think in most things is just finding the balance.
Right. And he was a really good guitar player, and he was with it for about a year. He was with Machine Gun Rerun for about a year. And then his wife had a kid too. And so, I mean, there's a trend there. I'm older and my kids aren't that young anymore. So having people coming in, that are younger in new relationships and stuff, and having kids definitely can be a drawback. So we did have a female come and try out, and she did great. She did really, really well. She became a really good friend of mine, but a lot of people weren't really too keen on playing in a band with her due to what she did for work, which was rather exotic.
She was a parakeet,
Yes, yes, she was an exotic animal.
professional parakeet.
Yeah, yeah, with a pole. But yeah, no, great person. Just absolutely love her to death. She's awesome. However, some people's wives and stuff aren't very cool with them playing in a band with somebody who they consider, could possibly take them away or whatnot. So that ended up driving a few people out of the band. And so we had to audition new people and bring new people in. She was in the band for about a year, but at the same time, she had to drive. It was like an hour one way because whenever we were doing our practice, it was kind of during rush hour traffic. So, and she lived in Salt Lake. So driving from Salt Lake to where we were was just a huge pain. It was just too much. So going out to play the show or to play the practice and then go back home, it ended up just becoming kind of a chore. And that's understandable. She's a great guitarist, good friend. Don't really have anything bad to say about it. Sometimes things just happen. Had another band, another guitar player show up, and he had a guitar. That was about all he had. But he had a great attitude. He wanted to play, but he lived in Wyoming. So his commute was quite a bit as well.
Mm,
And he played a
yeah,
show with us. And then after that, he was like, yeah, he's like, I can't keep doing it. Gas prices went up, COVID became a thing. And so a lot of things just kind of went downhill from there. We were going to do a show during the whole COVID pandemic, and one of the guitarists says said that she might have the COVID, and it was like, well, I don't like to say that I'm not going to be able to do a show, but that's understandable. The
yeah.
whole situation was very raw. It was very new, and it was like, I'm sorry, but one of our members might have COVID, and it's probably not worth it to you as a bar to try to get somebody to come in and play that could possibly spread it.
Yeah, definitely. You don't want to be the person that brings that into a crowd and disperses
Right.
it and everything like that. It's one of the few situations where, I consider it understandable to kind of back out of a show. If it definitely at that time in that situation.
Yeah, we had to back out of the show, and the venue was very understandable because it was happening often. Actually, there was a lot of bands that had to back out of shows because of COVID, because of what was going on there. But yeah,
Yeah.
we ended up going for a while without having a guitarist, and we would get together, and I was trying to play the guitar, but I'm probably my own worst critic when it comes to playing the guitar, but I don't feel
Yes.
like I'm that good.
You're great.
So, well, thank you. Me and the drummer were just kind of jamming, and I was just like, well, maybe this is just what it's gonna have to be. I might have to do some backing tracks with the bass on it, and gosh, if we're gonna keep going, we're losing members left and right. We probably went through 20 musicians trying to find anybody who'd stick around. And always in the back of my head, I always had this guy. And I was like, man, he'd been in a band with both me and Cody. Really cool guy, very close friend of mine.
I know this guy.
I was like, yeah, you
I
know
know
this
this
guy.
guy.
He's bald. Yeah, he's bald. I don't know what else to say about
Just
that, but
big, bald, and
yeah,
beautiful.
everybody in the band now is bald. Yeah. So it's like maybe we shouldn't be Machine Gun Rerun. Maybe we should be like three bald guys,
No
jamming.
hair, don't care.
No hair, don't care. Yeah, buy a beer. Yeah. So yeah, I ended up getting a hold of him, and things just ended up working out just right, and he was able to come and audition, and now Tori's the man. He's the man in the
Tori.
band, and he comes and jams, and we have a lot of good times. And I think this lineup, so me, Tori, and Cliff, I think that we're gonna be together for quite a while
Yeah.
doing our thing.
Solid. Good guys. And yeah, Tori's awesome. Hopefully we can have him on the show at least a couple of times to pepper in some interesting conversation
Oh
because
yeah,
he's
it will
just,
get definitely interesting with Tori around.
and I just love how recently Tori has been like positive. Everything that he says is positive
Yeah,
and encouraging and uplifting. And he's always been kind of a very positive guy, but he's definitely one upped it since then. And he's gone through some crazy stuff. So like cheers to
recently, yeah.
him for maintaining that and encouraging that kind of attitude. And everything that I hear from him is just happiest, like greatest. He's just very positive about everything. I
Yeah,
don't know
and,
what
and
to say more about that, but hopefully he'll join us.
he's in probably one of the worst life situations that you could go through over the last couple of months. And he just keeps on being positive and just being a hell of a good dude. So, I mean, when Tori listens to this, hopefully he's like, hey, everything's cool. I'm glad you talked about me.
Yeah. And then he will remember that I brought up waffle fries. Waffle fries.
Dome.
Unforgivable.
Yeah, his favorite thing was Dome, Dome. It's like for a long time there, I would just get a text that said Dome.
Who doesn't like Tom?
I know, right? But he wanted it as two separate words, as do and then me.
Oh, okay.
You got to
Just,
be a
just do it.
little different when you're in a band. I think we all pretend like we're gay, don't we? I mean, seriously, come on now.
Well, it's so the thing about being in a band, if you're serious about it, you're ambitious, it's like being married to a group of musicians.
Yes.
And that's essentially the only way you can make it work. You got to have that same level of trust and respect and everything. But at the same time, you joke about having sex with each other.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
But they're just jokes
Right.
for the
Right.
most part.
For the most part. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean,
Thanks, Tori.
you got to try at least 30 or 40 times. So,
Yeah.
but I mean, yeah, we can talk about, that whole subject about bands and, having it be kind of like a marriage and whatnot. But one of the best pieces of advice that I ever got that I didn't really take heed until the past maybe 5 or 6 years is have fun. You're doing it because you enjoy it. You're not doing it because, it's a grind, and it can be a grind. And I understand that. but always have fun. Always enjoy what you're doing. If you're on stage, have fun. Whatever happened before you went on stage, let it go. Just get up there, and it shows. It shows when you're having fun, and the audience will pay attention to that and pick up on it. If you're a stick in the mud, some people might not like you. So, I mean, yeah, we could go on about that for forever, but that's not having anything to do with auditions. But I heard that you had an audition recently.
I did actually. And, talk about being a stick in the mud. But I wasn't about to give up $2,700 of my hard earned money to some scam artist.
Some
So,
Nigerian prince out there.
yeah, I mean, it was like watching Coming to America. It's like the Prince of Zamunda is sending in me an email. Well, it's nothing like Coming to America, but me and my wife, we were just watching that earlier, so I had to bring
And
it up.
asked you to bark like a dog.
No, a big dog. Bounce on one leg.
If you've seen the show, you know what we're talking about.
That is a classic, but it's like 40 years removed at this point. So, going back to my Nigerian prince offering me untold riches and wealth, I received a message on Instagram from
Legit.
It was to my Gray March page, which is my self-produced project, and I got a message on Instagram from it was in my message requests, and then the person left a comment on a post as well saying, "Hey, I left you a message. It must be in your request folder. You haven't seen it yet." So I looked at it and it said, "Hey, would you be willing to do a guitar solo over a soundtrack?" And the side work is something that I'm always interested in. Somebody reaches out to me and says, "Hey, do you want to do this? You want to play some guitar here or help with the production of this?" Absolutely. I mean, I enjoy doing music, and that's why I do it. So I opened this message thinking the same thing, and I looked at the profile and double checked that it was something, a person that was an actual person, not a Instagram page with 2 followers and 8,000 following or something
Yeah.
like that, and no posts or anything like that. No, it seemed like an actual person to me. And so I was like, okay, yeah, just give me some details on this project. I would love to do a guitar solo over the soundtrack. I just need a little bit more information before I'm willing to move forward. I want to know what you're going for, and I want to make sure that I'm the right person to do it. I didn't get a whole lot of information, but I did get an email with a WAV file in it of the soundtrack.
There's a wave.
The WAV, the file, I got it.
The file was like, "Hi, waving at you."
Hello, we're waving, we're waving, we're waving, waving, waving. Yeah, Miss Rachel is forever burned into my brain because of my 10-month-old son. So there's that. Yeah, no, she's great. Absolutely. Like, he can't get enough of Miss Rachel. And it's wonderful. So, yeah, I get this WAV file. I load it into my DAW. I, start listening to it. It's kind of jazzy 3-chord progression. It goes for about a minute and a half, and it's kind of repetitive. And I'm just thinking, okay, so what they're wanting is something over this that has a little bit of evolution to provide what the backing track is not in terms of that. So I spent a couple days, several hours writing and producing and recording a guitar solo to put over it. In the meantime, I also get an email saying if you want to throw in some rhythm guitars, that would be great too. So I do that. I throw some jazzy chords in there and put that in one portion of the song and give it like a little bit of evolution, a little bit of change throughout. So it's not the same thing over and over and over again. It's interesting to listen to. And when it comes down to me sending them a demo of what I have done, they come back to me and say, "All right, well, this is good. Let me send this to my team and my manager, and they'll listen to it and let you know. In the meantime, I will send you a check for $500." And I was like, okay, yeah, $500, it's a little bit more than what I would normally charge for something of, this scale, but I'm absolutely happy to work in that range. And day goes by, and this person comes back to me and says, "All right, so my assistant accidentally wrote the check out for $3,000 instead of 300. And I'm
Wow, that's a
thinking,
huge mistake.
3,000 instead of 300. You told me 500, so none of these numbers are adding up. I'm starting to get a little suspicious. I look back at the messages. I see that this person doesn't have like the best grammar, and kind of thinking like, okay, what's going on here? This is a little bit fishy. At first, I
We don't.
overlooked that because, there are certain boundaries within the English language that you can kind of overlook when somebody's sending you a message over Instagram or other
And
social
we know
media.
that all musicians aren't completely good, great with their grammar as well and spelling.
Yes, hooked on phonics done worked for me.
Right.
But so, I kind of overlooked it at the time. Looking back on it, it's like, okay, maybe this person doesn't actually speak English. I don't know what's going on. And it's definitely fishy that they're trying to send me a check for $3,000 and then requesting that I cash it with my bank app and send them the remainder back. And I'm sitting there thinking, like, okay, this is something that I have heard about and seen. I'm not doing this.
Right.
I don't say that. What I say is I'm not particularly comfortable with this. So what can we do to make sure that this is, above board? And they say, "Oh, well, we can't issue any more checks for a whole month."
Of course.
Oh, yeah, cuz you only get one check a month. Right. Okay. That's how businesses work. That's how a checking account works. So I'm sitting there thinking like, yeah, this is definitely fishy. What I send back to them, my response was, "Okay, no worries. I can wait a month."
Yeah.
We give it a couple
Not what they're
hours.
expecting, though.
No, no, no. So what they say to me is, "Well, we can't wait a month. We have a deadline. We need to release this." And I was saying, "Okay, well, I am more comfortable giving you this than accepting a check and trying to cash it into my bank account for much larger than refunding you the excess amount. Like, this
Right.
is not something I'm comfortable doing." Didn't hear back from them. So what I did, I was all full of piss and vinegar. I'm like, screw these guys. They're trying to scam me out of $2,700. Like, and I did all of this work on a guitar solo. So
Yeah. Screw those
I
guys.
recorded. Yeah, screw them. Like, who does that? Like, I understand the scam in and of itself, but then on top of that, I spent the time actually making something for you.
Yeah, it's even worse.
So I put a backing track to it myself. I recorded everything, did my own version of it, and released it yesterday.
That'll show them.
Yeah, that'll show them. I'll make 7 cents a month on Spotify with that recording. So, but seriously, I mean,
Perfect.
it's just at that point, I was just like, this is work that I put into it, and it deserves to be out and about, regardless of whether or not this is some sort of weird scam. I'm just going to release it. So that's what
Right.
I did. Yeah, I
Well,
called it Jazzploitation.
that's a pretty good. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, and the album cover is a pile of money that is on fire because that was what they wanted to do to me. They wanted to take my
Because
bank
that's what
account
it
and set it
is.
on fire.
Yeah. Don't they know that you can only trick so many people like that anymore? I mean, musicians aren't known to be the smartest people, but, you know, something's too good to be true. It's usually too good to be true.
Yes, absolutely. But the whole new angle about this entire predicament was that they asked me to provide a service to them that was specific to the platform that they were reaching out to me on. So they knew that I was a musician and they
Right.
requested a guitar solo, and it was just a lot more targeted. And that's what initially made me kind of intrigued by this project, and then found out later that it was a scam. It's unfortunate.
That is very
And
unfortunate.
I can only feel for anybody who's fallen for something very similar to this because it's ridiculous. Like, musicians, they're passionate about the music that they create, and it's very easy to take advantage of that. I've seen so many different things where musicians are taken advantage of and they're scammed out of money based on somebody promising to help them or push them, promote them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And, in this day and age, you got to be an entrepreneur. You have to protect your own interests. You have to be so many different things on top of being a musician. You have to be, well versed in a lot of different copyright laws, various different things like that, so that you can release your own
You got to
music.
be on top
It's
of the
just,
Nigerian prince
yeah,
scam.
yeah, exactly. There's always going to be somebody out there who's going to try and take advantage of you for their own gain. And
Right.
that sucks. Like,
Unfortunately.
you get drawn in and you get played for a sucker, and it's unfortunate that musicians are taken advantage of as often as they are, because the idea behind the art that is being created is pure, and then it gets discolored by all of these different industry business just scams. It's terrible.
Right.
So be careful out there. Definitely be careful out there. Know what you're doing, know what you're worth, and at the end of the day, it serves you a lot better to do the work yourself than to have somebody else do it.
Yes. Because who can you
And
trust? I mean,
well,
you can
you
trust
can't really
yourself.
trust anybody, but I will say that on the flip side, there are so many different people in the music industry that are definitely doing it for the right reasons, and they will put their neck on the line for something that they truly believe in, even if they're not the artist who produced it and created it or anything like that. There's a lot of good folks in the music industry too. It's just really difficult to find them. But when you do, that's what takes it to the next level.
Yeah. And those are the ones you need to kind of get their information, have it in your back pocket and communicate with them on a regular basis. Having networking is a great thing to have.
Yeah, definitely network yourself. And, if anybody's doing a good job and proving their worth in it, then that deserves to be talked about.
Yes. Well, I think that's all I got for my auditions.
Yeah. A lot of different people that didn't really understand what it took,
Right.
and a few people that really wanted to do it, but for various different reasons, there was something kind of more important, keeping them tied to something different, and that's
The
fine.
human element. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is
So,
understandable.
yeah, definitely, because that's the interesting thing about music is the human element. It's always some sort of influence there that you have to imbue into the music. Otherwise, it's just boring and easy to tell what's coming next, what's going to happen, as boring.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to wrap this up. Story of the day for auditions. And hopefully, a few of you got a few words of advice at the tail end here. Hope we
Yeah.
weren't too long in the tooth.
And if you're a musician and you do the shitty things that I, talked about in the auditions, do better. That's all I got to say.
We're coming for you. I'm not afraid to call anybody out if they're full of shit. There was recently somebody on a particular touring management agency that got called out.
Really?
And there were stories and stories and stories from various different bands that were thinking that they had signed to this touring agency, but this guy was just taking their money and doing nothing with it, or very, very little, if anything. There's people like that. So you got to be careful. You got to know who to trust.
Right.
All right. Well, wrapping up. Until next time, appreciate you guys for listening. And thanks, Drew, for sharing your story of the day.
You're welcome. I look forward to more.
All right. See ya.
Four.